my name's Alexys Princeton, and today I'll be summarizing the text we were assigned that correlated with this module. The book we were assigned was titled Rule Jordan Rule, The World the Slaves Made, and it was written by Eugene Genovese in 1974. My group split up this reading and summarized our sections due to the book being nearly 800 pages. My first thought when reading this was that the title Genovese gave this book, The World the Slaveholders Made, did not sufficiently explain what the slaves themselves had experienced, which seemed to be what the book would have been entailed. The main emphasis on Genovese's work was that the relationship between the masters and the slaves on the plantations, claiming that slavery was a negotiated space. He explained things such as Southern paternalism and how they were tossed between showing gratitude and kindness as well as hatred. He explained how American slaveholders held the best interests for their slaves, and he explained how by accepting the slaveholders' idea of paternalism, enslaved people controlled the pace in which they worked. They obtained recognition for marriage and placed other restriction on the slaveholders' powers. A quote I found on page 146 was, "To the slaves, the white point of view looked a bit bizarre, and the very meaning of paternalism shifted to one of the independence. If the master had a duty to provide for his people to behave like a decent human being, then his duty had to become the slave's rights. When the master preferred to translated their own self-defined duties into privileges for their people, an utter absurdity of illogic of which the most servile slaves could see through. The slaves understood the duties to be duties because they knew that their masters depended upon their labor, which sometimes even preferred to think freely given despite obvious coercion." So I found that on page 146, and it basically is just saying that how they feel about the white privilege and how they feel about their slaveholders. In the beginning, Genovese states that slavery is founded upon a class-based system that is reinforced by race. Within the system, they support the idea of dominance, in which the states slave themselves limited to the extent to which whites exercise dominance. Being a slave, you must take everything to your master directly, even if it will give them undesirable consequences. Some of the consequences included like beating and harder work and stuff like that. A master got to decide all the punishments and etc. They also discussed the Southern legal system in which the slaves committed crimes against the whites every now and then and must be held accountable. They state that if the slaves had a will, they were counted as a human being, so that was their right for justifying them being a human, as if they had a will, they were considered a human. Genovese also goes into detail on slave ethics throughout this whole book and how slaves fought for control of production in the market-driven economy. They would go to extremities, such as referring to work, breaking equipment, forcing masters to make accommodations that pleased them. And just as the northern factory directors needed to adapt to this ethnic, the plantation owner permitted the slaves for their corn-shucking parties. Cotton production adapted a different pace in these factories, and the slave labor and the settlements it was entailed to were lost on the northerners due to them occupying the South after or post-war. So that's like the main gist of the book, and from like the part I read, it was just going into detail about how slaves and masters correlated and how the slaveholders thought they had the best interest, but in reality the slaves, they thought they were just being dominant and stuff like that. And it's a really good book, and yeah.